Welcome and thank you for coming to the library as we celebrate National Library Month at the Laney Library. We have a very special guest today. His name is Proverb Jacobs. He's written a beautiful 2-volume book called Autobiography of an Unknown Football Player. And because he is such a special guest for our college, we actually have 2 introductions today. And we're going to start with an introduction from our college president, Dr. Elnora Webb.
Well, it's always wonderful to be in here, especially to see students. And of course, you come to the library often, right? To read, to learn, to research, to stay ahead of the curve. Literally, figuratively. Those of you who are baseball players, you have a clue what I'm talking about, right? You're not jumping up and down to the library, the library, the library. It's an essential place, and I'm so pleased that you all are here. I am especially a little bit overwhelmed by someone who I would call, in the classic sense, a Renaissance man. This gentleman retired from Laney some years ago, but that was long after he had a major professional career in professional sports. And then he chose to come here as a math instructor and then serve us as a critical coach, or was it coach first and then math? I think it was that in that order. Coach of women's track, coach of men's football. The gentleman is rather exceptional, and I don't mean that lightly. Very talented. And hopefully he'll tell you some of his stories that he experienced when he was a young person, when he was a young adult, and some of the challenges that unfortunately too many of us are still experiencing on this planet and in this country and in this city. So ask him questions, probe him. He's rather light on his feet, even though he's a commanding man, and he is very insightful. Beyond the obvious, seem to be quiet in a lot of ways, but towering in terms of dealing with challenges and overcoming obstacles. And I think there's a colleague, an old colleague of his in the room who has a clue what I'm talking about. So without further ado, I know there's a genius of a spirit who's going to come up and give an introduction as well, but I have to say it's an honor to be in the room. Dr. Proverb Jacobs.
Now we're going to have our formal introduction from our former head librarian, Shirley Costin.
Good afternoon. I had the privilege of working with Proverb for a number of years here, and I am surprised at all the information that I'm about to read to you that I found out today. Proverb G. Jacobs Jr. was born in Marksville, Louisiana. Didn't know he's from Louisiana. I'm from New Orleans. He was 18 months old in 1936 when his family relocated to Oakland, California. Educated at local public schools, he earned an Associate of Arts degree from Modesto Junior College, a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of California, Berkeley, a Master's of Art in Physical Education from San Francisco State University, and a Doctorate of Education degree from the University of California, Berkeley. He currently serves on the Board of Trustees, University of California, Berkeley Foundation. During his early college years and while working in Alameda County in juvenile halls, Proverb played professional football for the Philadelphia Eagles, the New York Giants, the New York Titans, later the New York Jets, and the Oakland Raiders. In 1967, he was the defensive coordinator of the San Jose Apaches under head coach and longtime friend Bill Walsh. In 1978, after scouting for the Cincinnati Bengals, Proverb joined the scouting staff of the San Francisco 49ers under new head coach Bill Walsh and remained with the organization for 5 years, helping to build the champion San Francisco 49ers, dubbed by football writers as the team of the decade. Proverb's Super Bowl ring from 1981 is a special memento of that time. Do you have it on?
Can you see it?
Proverb taught physical education and coached track and field. He also taught basic arithmetic, political science, and the sociology of sports. In 1972, he started coaching James Robinson and continued to work with him as he went on to become a world-class middle distance runner. In 2003, after years of effort, Proverb established a women's track program at Laney College in Oakland. Among the young women he coached was Sharonda Williams, who went on to Arizona State, where in 2009 she was named the Pac-10 Woman Track Athlete of the Year. Proverb has been married to his second wife, Mimi, since 1973. He helped raise their 2 sons, Jay, Proverb III, and Stephen Mabel, while Mimi attended law school. Dr. Jacobs.
Come on over here. All right, well, I'm glad now you got to hear a little bit about Proverb Jacobs. By the way, I didn't properly introduce myself. My name is Evelyn Lord, and I'm the current head librarian at Laney Library. So what I want to do here, please go ahead and make yourself comfortable. We'll move this mic so you can. But I have some questions that I prepared. We also have one of our library staff members, Michael Wright, who's sitting in the corner there. He's agreed to read a few pertinent passages from this book. Before we start, I just want to say this is a beautiful book. The writing it's simply beautiful. But I'm also impressed as a librarian by the research in this book. As you read the book, you learn not only about Dr. Jacobs' life growing up and about his life moving on forward, but you learn about what's happening in society around us. So it's a wonderful memoir, but also a wonderful history book. And I want to check with you to see, should we go ahead and get started with some of these questions?
Okay.
Okay, so, and I'm gonna read the question into the mic and then turn the mic over to you. So you were born in Marksville, Louisiana, but your family moved to Oakland when you were very young. Can you tell us why your family decided to make this move?
There were people migrating to California, and we were part of the migration. Those are the days. Those are the days before running water. That was supposed to be a joke. My parents, I asked my mother later on why we moved to California, and why we moved to California, and she said we wanted to provide a better life in California. You probably follow me on that? Nod. And so my parents moved to North to have a better life for our children.
Thank you. Michael, can I have you come here? I'm going to ask you a little bit more about growing up in Oakland, but Michael has a passage that from your book that I'd like him to read that tells a little bit about what your family encountered coming here and the differences.
So, how's everybody doing? I'm just going to read a short passage from his autobiography.
Yeah, you take that.
So, moving out of rural Louisiana was culture shock. We had indoor plumbing with running hot water, electricity, and a gas stove. My mother thought that she had moved into heaven. She said it was like paradise. The flat cost of $13.50 a month. His mother found out that the water heater for the whole building was on our bill. She said, I took my 3 children, a rearing, down to Mrs. Tate's office on 7th Street. She was the landlady and told her that she had us paying for someone else's hot water. She lowered our rent to $12 a month. So that's one of the passages from his autobiography, and this is the other one. There were a lot of changes happening within our family. For instance, all of a sudden my father found out that he could vote. Back in Louisiana, blacks still couldn't vote. You couldn't even register if you were black. Although my father didn't vote right away, when he found out, he said it made him feel like a man. He voted in the next election. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt was in office at the time. My father said that he served a purpose because he brought us out of the Depression. Negroes back in Marksville, Louisiana, didn't discuss politics since they weren't able to vote. The only way that you could get into the political arena was through a white associate. They didn't even allow you to come around the voting area when the voting was taking place. This was especially true of local elections when a sheriff or local politicians were being elected.
Thank you, Michael. Would you like to say anything more about what it was like to grow up in Oakland? I bet everybody would be really curious about what Oakland was like back in those days.
The era of streetcars. You ever hear of streetcars? Well, I can't tell you anything about that. No, it was a time where things were very volatile. We didn't have opportunities to go to school where we wanted to go. In fact, in Oakland, they had a school called Santa Fe Grammar School, and my mother took me and my siblings to school, and they told her that blacks weren't allowed to attend the school. I think that's racism, right? And she was a person who knew how to get things done. In fact, before leaving,
I'm going to take this out and let you hold it.
okay.
But hold it up close.
Okay, I'm trying to gather my thoughts.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
My mother was a real fighter. And when my father came out and he went to Moeller Barber College. You ever hear of Moeller Barber College? Where you go get cheap haircuts?
Yes.
My mother told my father to go ahead and move to California, and she would finish harvesting cotton, selling the farm animals, paying the company store. You heard the story about soldier sold to the company store. My my mother gathered up her kids and came across the country, all the way from the east, all the way from West Coast, all the way to California. She said when she came across the country, anybody ever hear of Mason-Dixon line? That's a deep path where blacks couldn't ride on the front of the train. So she had to weather all of that. Okay.
Okay. I'm going to move on a little bit. So let me use this and I'll pass it. So you attended Oakland Tech, and you excelled in athletics there. And then after graduation, you attended Modesto Junior College. I'm wondering, what was it like for you to be a young student at college, living pretty far away from home for the very first time?
Number one, I was only black on the football team. I mean, you look around, and you're the only brother out there. And I had to establish myself amongst the fellows. And of course, they all wanted to try me out. You know what I mean? Well, try me out. And the guys, I came from Oakland, California, and the people at Modesto Junior College were all cowboys. So we had to get the ship straightened out. And eventually I became captain of the football team, and also captain of the track team. Track was always my favorite sport. I could just play football. And so I straightened that out, got all the things, everybody lined up, and there was no blacks. There were about 12 blacks on the squad.
Well, let's move forward in time a little bit, and let's go to a different campus. So after Modesto, in January 1956, you were admitted to the University of California at Berkeley. And at that time, there were very few African American students on campus. Can you describe the atmosphere on the Cal campus for African Americans during that time in the 1950s?
When I transferred to Berkeley from Modesto Junior College, it was a whole new ballgame. There were only 5 blacks on the football team. 5. And I had to weather that. I did well at Modesto Junior College. I had a B+ average. I have fulfilled all my lower division requirements, and I thought I was ready to challenge Cal. I wasn't ready, because I got to change my attitude. And what I mean by that is that I had to fight every single day, every single hour, every single minute of the day, because I had no pathfinder. It was only me. I never had a black coach, never had a black teacher, all the way through college.
Okay, I think now I'd like Michael to come here and read one more passage from the book, because this is about that time when you were just at the University of California, and what you did, because you had to make yourself successful there. Michael.
So once again, this would be one of the last passages from his autobiography. This one is more so when he transferred to the University of California in Berkeley. And this is it. I applied for admission to the University of California at Berkeley and was accepted for the spring semester beginning in January of 1956. This was a great time for me educationally. My father had always told my brother and me that we weren't college material, but my mother had always told us not to let anybody tell you what you couldn't do. I didn't know it at the time, but this was going to be the most difficult and stressful 2.5 years of my life. The university was to prove to be a cold, hard, and unforgiving institution. And this passage is more so about his experience with the library on that campus. I remember a scenario that took place in the library once I started to go there with regularity. I had my spot at a certain table where I would always sit to study. Sometimes I would go there during the day in between classes. I would see other students sitting in their spots, and most of these students would be Asians. I would go to spring practice, to training table, and then come back to my spot. I noticed that the same people would be sitting in their spots. Sometimes I would be gone for as long as 4 hours, and when I got back to the same students would be in their spots. This meant that while I was at football practice, the real students were in the library logging study time. If they were to be in the library 5 days a week, they would have an extra 20 hours of study time a week on me. I was going to have to find a way to make up for the time that I was spending on the practice field. The library closed at 10 p.m. and I had some time between classes, and I was going to have to use all of this time if I was going to survive.
Not bad, huh?
Okay, well, we'll move on a little bit. So you were very successful, ultimately. But I want to move on to a little bit later. In 1958, you were recruited to play for the Philadelphia Eagles. And you went on to play for the New York Giants, the New York Titans, and the Oakland Raiders. What did it feel like for you when you first started playing for the Eagles?
It's going back a little ways. We had the college, anybody hear of the college all-star game? Old people know about that. When the draft came up, I was drafted in the second round. I'd be a billionaire now. There was, by the way, how did we do against us, the college players? We beat the Detroit Lions 34-14. NFL champions, the Detroit Lions. And my first experience, this is the first time I really been away from home. There were only nine black players, all DBs, and wide receivers. I looked up and I said, I'm the only brother out here. There's only four of us out. And what happened was I got drafted number 2 in the United States, the only black lineman on the college all-star team. The other black lineman was Big John. You know why they call him Big John? So he was big. Me and him, we'd race each other in practice. We raced against each other in practice. We would beat everybody by 5 or 10 yards. The man was big. His head was big. His shoulders were big. His feet were big. His eyes were big. His head was big. Everything was big. He he'd sit down in the meeting, wouldn't say anything to anybody. So consequently, we had a chance to, I would say there were no more than there were 12 teams, and 33 people on the team. Anybody got the calculator out? We have somebody know what to do. Hmm? 396 professional football players in the United States. There's no other ones. And so we had John Baker was a defensive end. I was an offensive tackle. The rest were wide receivers. And that's the way it was. Okay. You want to hear some more stories about that, right? By the way, when I was writing this book, I didn't realize this challenge I had started. Now? Okay. You had to accept the challenge. That means that blacks weren't integrated in the college. Blacks weren't integrated at that time. Remember a guy named Jim Pace? Don't remember him. He eventually committed suicide, but we had to stick together because there was nobody else around. Anybody here Jimmy Taylor? He made me mad, but I couldn't do anything. Jimmy Taylor, and these guys had never played with a black person their whole life. And there's nothing you can do about it. And I always said, we always sat together for comfort, right? And just a little bit about the All-Star game. All the brothers were sitting on the bench. And the Jordan line were beating up those guys, right? And he said, Jacobs, Baker, you guys get in the game. And we took the game over. But the thing you remember that is there was none of these guys that ever played with anybody black in their lives. Want to hear some more stuff?
Go ahead.
I looked at this stuff. I looked at this and
Get the mic. Use the microphone so everybody can hear.
Okay.
You want me to ask this question here about Laney College? This is one of my questions that I want to know. Okay, and I'm gonna. So in 1968, you were hired to teach and coach at Laney College. And in 1968, if I remember right, that was when Laney College was actually at the old campus across the street. That was before we moved to this modern campus here. So what was it like, Laney College, in the old days?
Laney College in the old days. It's actually a joke. No, it's not a joke. We had one-story building. We were just on the other side of the canal, of the water. In fact, I'm getting out of order, but that's where the Oakland Raiders played when I was playing Al Davis' first team. You're at Al Davis, right? and there are only 5 blacks on the team. You find me on that? And so, what? Oh, I got lost.
Oh, Laney College, the old campus.
There's so much stuff going on there I can't even cover. But like I say, it's detailed. My first year, when I first got to Laney, when I first got to Laney, it was like a whole new world. Things were happening on campus that you wouldn't believe. That was back in the days of black students were taking our school van, driving to LA, involved in all kind of activities, right? And it's so much that I can't even I don't know where to start, because everything is in this book. Everything is in the book. So how did you do that? I don't know. All I know is that I had spent a lot of time in the library, right? It carried over from when I was undergraduate in Cal. I learned how to study and learned how to do research. And it was something. Where's Joe Taxera? I pointed him out because I coached the distance runners, not the sprinters, not the hurdlers, but the distance runners. And sometimes my long-term memories kicks in. But anyway, Joe's here, and he's the only track guy in here, right? Right?
Yes.
How many other people? Joe Taxera, the only guy. And by the way, I've known these guys since they're babies, since they were 17, 18 years old. And we're still friends. We're still Joe. Hello.
Okay, I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time. I bet some people would like to shake your hand, and also there may be some questions. So I have one more question for you, because we have a wonderful audience here that includes probably predominantly an audience of student athletes that are here. So what words of wisdom would you give to student athletes who are just starting their college and athletic careers?
First of all, there's only one reason you come. Only one reason you come to college. You know what that is? I beg your pardon? Education. That's the bottom line. Laney's always been a great school for transfer. Anybody in here, you know people who transfer? Raise your hand. You transfer? Get ready to transfer. What I'm saying is, if you don't get your degree, you've been used. You've been had. You know what I mean? Most people don't realize that this is going to be the pivotal point in your life. Once you get your A degree, and everybody's on track to get their A degree. You go to the counselor, you get, I don't want to do that, I got some big stuff to do. But the coaches get on you, right? As you probably said, how do you get all those football players in one room? And you see the coaches sitting there looking at them like this. Yeah, they heard you guys the different parts of the campus, right? So you learn how to study, what you do, what to do in the class. Because most people don't know, they don't know what to do in class. Okay? You have a question?
I like that advice. I want to ask, is there anybody here that has a question for Dr. Jacobs?
I did. Go ahead. What team did you win your Super Bowl with?
49ers. I wouldn't let you look at it. Just bar the doors. Always like
I'll put it on and walk around.
okay.
Only chance I'll get.
Coach Beam has.
You want to make an announcement?
I do. I do. First of all, I don't really, usually don't need a mic. Everybody here, including me, we owe you a thanks. Listen to the stories he's telling you. When he started, you could count the number of African American football players or in college on one or two hands. People like Proverb set the trail, opened doors for all of you to be here today. His mother, to even make the journey all the way out to California, to Oakland, what a great journey. It wasn't one of many who were doing it at that time, but I didn't know about Santa Fe. I know where Santa Fe is. I didn't realize we had segregation in Oakland at that time, so to hear that was interesting. But as you all sit there, how would it feel if someone told you couldn't come to Laney? Or when you came, you got tried because you were the only African American on the team and you wanted to play offensive line or you wanted to play receiver. What he's done is open the doors for all of you here and then to write the book. And I remember when you retired, you left me. Proverbs was a scout for the Bill Walsh, arguably the ultimate football coach that's ever been there. And Proverb was one of his top scouts. When you look at Jerry Rice that came from Mississippi State, or Valley State, people like Proverb found and went all over the place. And you left me those notes that you had, the details of all the things you looked at, and the character of how to pick a prospective NFL player. And I thought about it and I was thinking, well, why was Proverb chosen to be the scout? And I figured it out from the reading of the books and parts of your story, because you had been there, but also because you're an educator and you can look inside of someone. So for me, and I hope everybody here understands what you've done for all of us in the sport that we play. So I want to thank you, and I hope all of you take the time to come by and personally thank him before you leave today, because it wasn't easy, the journey that he had to make. So thanks, Proverb. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. It won't easy. But the thing about this is that Laney has always stressed getting an education. Always. Now you have to have your A degree transferred, don't you? Don't you?
Yes.
That kind of forces you to go to school. You say, I kind of like school, but I don't feel like fooling with it, so on and so forth. I want to go back a while about what the other schools, what your schools think about Laney. That Laney College graduates more students, the football team graduates more students, more transfer students, more transfer students. So the thing, if I can leave you with something, make sure you get your degree. If you don't get your degree, you've been had. You got that? You've been had. What we always did, one time one time, this is in deep past, all the Florida schools are down in Laney. And I'm watching them and trying to realize that. So why all you coaches down here from 4-year schools, why y'all down here? He said, because Laney's got some football players and also has some grades. So if you don't get your A, if you don't get your A degree, and everybody should be able to do that, right? Although some people are reluctant to say it, but it's okay to be a student. Also, it's a nice place, stepping stone, right? Because when you get finished, everybody can't make it in the pro. You get small schools that says, oh, we have guys go to Oregon Tech, Montana State, and whatever. As long as you have your degree, you won. If you don't have your degree, you're lost. It's interesting, right? Any questions? Any questions?
Well, I don't have any questions, but I do have a feeling there's some people that will want to personally meet you, and so I want to give that time. But I also want to say a couple things about your book. Well, one main thing, we have 2 copies of the book, and it should be available next week for checkout. And we'll have it available on the new books, the new bookshelf in the library. So I would encourage you, when you see it out there, to check it out, because once you start reading it, you can't put it down. It's a very compelling read.